100% put this bitch on silent.
I love what you've done with the place.
What I've done?
Yeah.
What I do.
It looks nice and tidy.
Oh yeah, me and Chris cleaned before the, Chris had cleaned before the thingy.
What thingy? Oh, the thingy, yeah. That makes sense.
I don't know if it helps the shot or not to have the sex toy in there, but that'll probably be in there.
Nice. You know, my coworker actually got me a fucking lavalier mic, but I haven't figured out how to use it. I mean, I just got it today, so I'm not gonna spend the time. But that's okay, cause like I said, I'm thinking that this might be a scene I actually turn into something. All right, well, thank you. Really the stuff that I wanted to chat with you about, and I'll first start off by acknowledging that neither one of us are quote unquote experts in the field of nutrition and exercise. We don't have degrees in it, but we have an interest. And I think when two like minds come together, anyway, I'll give you what's going on in my head, and whatever you have to provide feedback on, that's really the only thing I'm interested in. So the three things that are circling around in my head is, as I'm getting closer to hitting my ideal body, I don't even want to refer to like body weight anymore, but I'm more interested in body composition. So as I get closer to hitting my ideal body composition, I'm starting to pay more attention to everything. And when I say everything, I mean the timing of eating, macronutrients, how much protein to carb to fat ratio, timing of workouts, how often I should be working out, the workout frequency, and basically as many fine details as I can get. Because what I'm starting to understand about the specific goal that I have in mind for myself is, and I really want to give credit to you for many things, but you know, I had achieved a physique that I was extremely proud of in preparation for a movie role last year, and then I lost all of it, and I've done it multiple times, but you got to see it on someone else to understand. Like sometimes for me, at least, I can't speak for other people, but I get sparked, my inspiration gets sparked from like seeing something. And when we went to that rave earlier this year, and I saw the difference between your physique and other males who like were walking around, and you could clearly see that like other males were like going to the gym and doing the whole bodybuilding routine where like they're building up their muscles and they have mass. But what was so interesting to me, and it's like it's never left me, is that like what you had done with your physique is everything looked so intentional. And like that's the word that stuck with me for that weekend while we were at the rave. And like every time I looked at you, like your muscles looked intentional as opposed to generic, you know? And applying that to myself and my own development of exercise and fitness and all that shit, I'm starting to understand that what I want to do, such as leaving a legacy, is create an iconic aesthetic physique.
Like some Steve Reeves shit.
Who's Steve Reeves?
Oh, you gotta see him if you haven't seen him before, but he was like one of the early American bodybuilders, one of the first dudes to like play Hercules, and he's like a picture that a lot of people would look at when they think of like returning to the classic physique, like it's top notch.
Got it. Yeah. Well, I will have to look him up. Who I think of, who sticks in my head as who have achieved an iconic physique are individuals like Bruce Lee, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Ronnie Coleman, and then fictional Baki. He's like a newer iconic physique, but he does have an iconic physique, and Goku. So like my goal, and granted we're in 2022 now, and maybe even 2023 at the time of whatever, but I understand that with the saturation of social media, there are so many physiques out there, and like if you click on like one super shredded dude on Instagram, he's got 800,000 followers, but I've never fucking heard of him. What does it mean? How do you create an iconic physique at this day and age? With that being said, I understand that I want to create the best physique that I can create for myself. And in order to do that, with the knowledge that I'm obtaining, it does get down to like the nitty fucking gritty. It's not just like go to the gym every day. I mean, maybe to an extent, you can achieve like some level of greatness by like sticking with the basics. Like I'm going to the gym, I'm eating food, I'm in a caloric deficit. But what I've noticed based off of photo reference, and certain photos based off of what I'm doing with my diet and how often I'm going to the gym and things of that nature, I look different based on certain routines. Yeah. So all of that was just a segue into, I've come across this vocabulary term such as catabolic versus anabolic.
Mm-hmm.
And for the year of 2022, what I've really been doing most often is fasting to some extent. In the first half of the year, it was a lot of prolonged fasting where I was fasting for 24, 36, 48, sometimes 72 hours. And that's what like I was doing literally for like the first 6 months. In the latter half of the year, I've been doing a lot of intermittent fasting. And what I'm starting to suspect based off of additional knowledge is I'm really focused on muscle retention, and I don't really, as much as I'm into losing fat, I don't want to lose muscle along with the fat. And I'm starting to think that maybe intermittent fasting might not be the thing that will get me to achieving that goal of muscle retention while also continuing fat loss.
It's tricky, you know. I mean, you already said that neither one of us are experts, but my understanding is that so like we're talking nitty gritty here. So when you're going for nitty gritty, you have to deal with yourself as an individual. So we can go from the broad to the specific. Broadly speaking, everyone who does, you know, bodybuilding, that's kind of the bodybuilding, maybe some weight class sports, but bodybuilding will focus on that the whole point there is to maintain muscle while you're losing weight. And so anyone in that area will tell you that normally you can't, unless you're on a bunch of gear, you cannot, you know, gain muscle while losing body fat, at least not very effectively. So what you're normally playing with is this game of being slightly over in calories, and it's being slightly over in calories so that you're not going to be losing muscle while you're working out intensely. But it's hard to figure out the exact amount of calories you need to have a perfect balance. So what a lot of people end up doing is just accepting that they're going to go over the calories needed for a deficit. They're going to be not in a catabolic state, but it's likely that they're going to overshoot it just to be safe. So during that phase, the bulking phase, they're going to build muscle, but they're probably going to build more, they're going to get more fat in their body than they anticipated. And they just deal with that. And then when they're ready to cut, they do cut, because bodybuilders obviously only have to look perfect for that one moment.
Mm-hmm.
Getting specifically to you, since you're trying to maintain this year round, it seems like you're just in a position where you're going to have to tinker, where you're going to have to risk possibly gaining weight. And you know, you've talked about like your cheat days a few times over the last 2 weeks, and I mean in the past, and you know, it's not completely dialed in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You would need a lot of consistency, and you need a lot of consistency, and then you need to start tinkering up like how much you're eating a little bit at a time, and possibly using the deck set to see how the numbers change.
Don't mind us.
No, you're fine.
Yeah.
Can you accept to go for it anyways?
Yeah.
Very good. it's a lot of like information, but just to get the broad context and go to specifics. So for you, it's like you go get the DEXA and you see where you're at in terms of like lean mass, at least the rough figure. And you know, that's going to be your mark. And now you're going to want to increase calories, probably something in the, say, 100 to 200 range, like your average calories per week. If you add up everything you had in the week and divide it by 7, like you want to be maybe 100 to 200 calories over. And do that for however many weeks you think is good before you go to another DEXA scan and you see how things changed. And you'll also be able to do the eye test. Like, you know that like when you're in deficit, a lot of times the muscles stop looking as good, as full.
Yeah.
So you have the combination of the eye test plus what the DEXA is telling you. And you know, what you're going to be hoping for is finding out inch by inch what's the right amount of calories for you to maintain the muscles the way that you want. But it seems to line up with how many calories you're burning from working out. So you're not seeing your body fat go up.
Yeah.
You're staying in this really great sweet spot.
Yeah, which sounds really difficult, but what I'm understanding is that the best way to track it is to track it through a DEXA scan, probably like once a month-ish.
I would say probably,
Yeah.
but do not lose like the eye test, because there is a part here where like, you know, when we say lean tissue, and I'd have to look it up specifically, but I'm pretty sure the DEXA counts essentially everything that isn't fat as your lean tissue. So not, you know, that percentage could stay roughly the same, but it doesn't mean the muscle, the part that you're interested in, staying the same. So you want to, you know, combine that with the visual.
Got it. Okay. Now, how do you feel about like, because one person that I pay attention to is Chris Bumstead.
Yeah.
He just became the 4th-time classic physique winner of Mr. Olympia. He mentioned that he eats pretty much as soon as he wakes up. He does cardio in the morning, fasted, and then eats a meal right after, and then continues to eat throughout the day when he's preparing for the competition. And he said that the specific reason is to stay in an anabolic state. And I found that, like, after I got that little nugget like a week or so ago, I don't even know if it's physically possible to perceive that your metabolism has gone up. But it feels like my metabolism has gone up ever since I haven't done intermittent fasting for like 2 weeks. And I've been eating closer to 10 o'clock as opposed to 1 o'clock. And it feels like I don't know, like I feel stronger. I feel more powerful. I don't know. I don't know if it's like a mental thing or not.
Well, this is why the nitty gritty ends up being individualized. Look at yourself, for example. We know from research that your brain, you know, it benefits from having glucose. In most studies, when we take a sample of people and we give them, you know, food, you know, normal diet, normal healthy diet, but we give them a meal in the morning, they process things better, like they're able to just think better. At the same time, we know anecdotally that a lot of people, when they're in a fasted state in the morning, they feel more energy. Because fasting, if you're feeling more energy and more jittery, most likely, I'd have to double check this, but it normally means that like your epinephrine or your first cortisol peak in the morning is just like higher, or your epinephrine is running higher, but or maybe in the absence of other things that feel sharper. But so we have this thing where it's like when we actually give people cognitive tasks to do, in a lot of the research, the people who have eaten perform those cognitive tasks better. But anecdotally, a lot of people report on, you know, a fast in the morning that they feel more alert. And that's really what they're going for, because maybe in most of their life, when they wake up in the morning, they feel tired, and that's the main detractor for them. So it ends up being that, like, you know, what works best for you? Because along with this anecdote, there's the people who try not to eat, and they experience so much agitation, so much hunger, that even if they're more alert, they want to eat if they're distracted, and some other people report actually feeling tired. So it does get really individual. And if like, you know, looking at the CBOM example, it might be the case that like eating earlier is the right thing for you. To really know, you'd have to go at it, you know, Dorian Yates style, like really be a scientist about it and actually like, because you haven't been recording things meticulously for the past few weeks, so it's like the things that we'd want to know is like, how's your sleep? What have you been eating? How's the macronutrients look like for that? That's the nutrient part. What's the calories? How many workouts? And roughly, you know, what's the length? What's the intensity? And then some measure of what sort of stress you've experienced over this last 2 weeks where things have been feeling like you just have a higher metabolism. You know, a lot of lifters from like, and I guess a lot of sports at this point do it, but like people just wake up in the morning and they do a mood self-assessment, because after enough practice, like reflecting on your mood, it ends up being a good measure. So you're waking up, out of the last 2 weeks, it's like, have you woken up more often feeling not that stressed, somewhere between calm and happy, or calm and positive affect, we'll say, whereas like the previous 2 weeks, maybe work was stressful. So that's at least like 5 variables that you would want to have monitored, so you could tell like, is this 2 weeks just like, no, everything's actually the same, but something just changed in your body after you've been doing this long enough? Well, specifically the eating earlier changed things, or did several variables change, but the eating earlier is just the most salient?
Got it. Yeah, well, the only reason that I started doing it is when I introduced myself to the concept of catabolic versus anabolic. And when I consider, and you know, I do a lot of eye tests and I take photos. I've been taking photos throughout the year, and there are so many different stages that my body has gone through based on what my weekly/monthly routine is. And what I have been seeing is, right now I'm like, I think I'm 188. When I get to 181, it's not just the fat that shrinks, like everything shrinks. And I'm at the point now where I would rather not lose 8 pounds and retain the muscle, as opposed to losing another 8 pounds and then shrinking in the same way that I've been doing.
There seems to be this, what's the word? This shitty thing where like cameras are known to add weight to your face, but they don't seem to do it for your body. And like what I've heard from a lot of people is like, you don't appreciate how large fitness models and bodybuilders are in real life looking at their pictures. Like to maintain that appearance of physique, like they have to be really, really large. And I bring this up to say like, we're probably not just talking about your muscle, because you're not at 0% body fat. We're talking about, you don't like how the muscle looks when you lose a bit more weight, but some of what you're losing might not be the muscle. If we had a DEXA, it might be that the muscle is the same. What you may be losing is the fat, the other things on top of the muscle that are giving you a fuller appearance or a contour that you like more. So the compensation, if you want to be lighter but still have that other look, is that you actually need to gain more lean mass.
So do you do that from what you just said, like a caloric surplus, a slight surplus?
You would tinker with the surplus.
Jesus.
Because it might be the case that like it turns out that your aesthetic and your preference, the you that you actually like most is not 181 pound Sean, it's 189 or 191 pound Sean, but that gain is in muscle.
Yes, and I think you're 100% right. I think, especially because we haven't even gotten into legs, but I think that once the legs are fully developed, that's probably going to add, if I had to guess, and this is just an estimate, 6 pounds on each, so that's an extra 12 pounds that I feel like I need to gain over the next 4 years. So ultimately I would be ending up in like the 200, maybe like, 196, 197 range.
I mean, you're 5'11", you're not in a weight cutting sport. It would be 5'11" and fit could easily be healthily anywhere between, high 180s and 210
Mm-hmm.
without much issue. I mean, when we think about like some of the NFL running backs who have been on the shorter side, but like when you see pictures of them, it's like that dude's fucking jacked. We're talking like 5'9", 5'10", but between 190 and 210 pounds.
Yeah.
So you being fully 2 inches taller than that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm still very interested in keeping an extremely lean mass, for the aesthetic. Okay, so just to recap, you're saying it might be worth considering going into a slight caloric surplus for the purpose of maintaining the lack of depletion that I experience with my muscles when staying in a deficit. Now, my current strategy has been, in an effort to offset the depletion of the muscles, has been trying to stay in an anabolic state while still maintaining a caloric deficit. And we haven't seen the results of that yet. I have to do a DEXA scan in order to see where we are with that. Okay. All right, switching gears from nutrition real quick.
Just real quick,
Mm-hmm.
a good measure of this might be, this is must online. If your supposed body fat percentage stays the same, but your lean mass goes up, because you don't care about your body weight.
Mm-mm.
So can the body fat stay the same while the lean mass increases?
I still feel that, and this is where it gets a little fucking complicated, because it is a body recomposition. I don't mind keeping the weight that I'm at right now. I'm happy with the weight that I'm at right now, but I am still interested in getting as shredded as humanly possible, if not for a year. I'm not saying I need to be at 5 or 4% for a year, but I want to see what it looks like so I understand. And I want to use it as like, okay, that's what 5% looks like at 185.
You can do it either way. I mean, there's not a wrong way to do this necessarily. Like, you could drop to 181 if that's what gets you to the 5%, and then you could try to build the lean mass from that point on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But you are going to have to, based on everything out there, you're going to need some amount of surplus.
In order to continue to gain muscle mass.
Yeah, and the only reason we're doing this, just to double back, is because you don't actually like the ripness, but you don't like how the size looks in the photo.
Yeah. And
so you gotta be bigger.
Yeah, I gotta be bigger. It's just, I gotta be bigger. Okay, alright. Alright, 2 other things. So, I'm a big fan of Mike Menser.
Yeah.
Mike Menser tries to keep it like really simple, and some of the things he preaches, I'm like, okay, it makes sense to me. I mean, he's like a maverick in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
He preaches 1 sets, and honestly, I've been doing 1 sets, but the thing is the muscles that I'm targeting, they're already built. So if I go into the gym and do 1 set workouts of chest, and I'm doing 5 different exercises for chest, it doesn't matter. Like, I could do no workouts of chest and I wouldn't experience a significant decrease of my muscles because they're already developed over the course of years of working out. So you can't prove or disprove, at least through my physique. But I am interested in growing my legs. And we've already had this conversation about like the differences between Mike Menser's approach, which is like less is more, go in there, work out for 30 minutes and do 1 set of each exercise, get the fuck out. Then you have Tom Platz, who's like doing 60 reps for 1 set, and he's doing that over and over again. Yet he's one to advocate only working out legs like once a month because of the sheer volume that he's doing when he's at the gym. So, and I already kind of have an idea what you're gonna say. What were you gonna say?
I'm not.
No, I was just like, dude, like, what do you think the secret is? There probably is no secret.
Well, real quick, do you want legs Tom Platz's size? Do you want legs Mike Menser's size?
I think Mike Menser is more proportional.
Yeah, so just something to keep in mind here is that like Tom Platz, it may be just his approach, but given the way other people's legs looks, there's probably some amount of Tom Platz's like leg size that is just genetics. That is just like his body's really, really responsive there. Because they're just massive. They're just massive. Mike Mentzer, just to dig in on that, it's like we can be fairly certain, given how Mike Mentzer approached things, that like he had a very clear idea of what failure felt like, what not being able to lift the weight again was like. You know, he was there. And my understanding, if you're just doing like one set and you're only working out your legs like once a week, then you need to have that same clear concept where it's like, if you're doing squats and you're doing one set, like getting out that last rep needs to be, you know,
impossible.
A death experience.
Yeah.
And if you're doing less than that, then you're not really doing Mike Mentzer's program.
Yeah, and I am all with that for every other muscle group, because there is no, like, I don't have to fear, like, oh, am I wasting my time with this fucking Mike Mentzer approach of doing one set? I go in, I do biceps. If I do 3 exercises of biceps, and I'm doing like the Mike Mentzer approach where you do one set and you go to failure, I'm gonna see him, like, it's gonna look good.
There's no reason to be afraid of the experiment. I mean, you can go to your room right now with some Taylor's tape and just measure your leg, do Mike's thing for 8 weeks. If there's a difference, you keep going. If there isn't, you don't.
Yeah, switch it up.
Yeah. You've done a bunch of experiments. Most experiments you've done have been self-serving because you don't, you know, because you love food. And I do too. But like, we're talking about 8 weeks out of the next 3 years to figure out like
what works for legs.
Yeah.
All right. I support that. All right, last thing. Macros. Again, it goes back to Mike Mentzer. I'm a fan of him. I'm a fan of his physique. And I like his scientific approach to nutrition and exercise. I like how he just like, this is what, you know, I just like his approach.
Yeah.
He's a supporter of, what is it, 30% protein, bulk of your caloric intake coming from carbs, and like 15% fat. So whatever, 15% fat, 30% protein, and then the rest, I think that might be 55. 55. Yeah, that sounds just like it. Yeah. However, every other motherfucking bodybuilder is doing protein like 45%. So it's like, dude.
So you got to remember that Mike Mentzer is a maverick, clearly has a low amount of fear to be doing things so differently than everybody else. There's a lot of people who are doing things. You got to appreciate the full human psychology when you're looking at these other people. Like, remember that they're humans, and that a lot of these people are managing all the shit that you normally see in a human. One of those things being like fear. Mike Mentzer is willing to go like, I took the notes, I took the pictures, I watched it, I don't need more protein, and I'm done thinking about it. And I don't need the psychological balm of more protein because I'm afraid I'm leaving something on the table, because I trust the research that I did. The other bodybuilders, especially the ones who are not mavericks, and I'm taking like right or wrong out of this because maybe at some point we'll find out that like it should be higher than Mike's estimate, but what I'm saying is like they're going way overboard because they don't know what's right, and they're not going through their own empiricism, and they just don't want to risk it, and they don't want to leave anything on the table. So it's not going to hurt them to eat 45% protein, you know? Well, in most cases, because I think at a certain amount of protein, I mean, you already went through the whole keto thing, but broadly speaking, they can take in that amount of protein, and probably they don't need all of that for the muscle synthesis that they're doing, but they get to go to sleep at night thinking like, there's no chance they didn't get enough protein.
Yeah.
Whereas like somebody like Mike Mentzer is like,
You don't need that much protein.
I have no evidence that I need more protein than this, so I'm not doing it. The other thing is that he's doing high intensity, and we talked about this before, but
You mean carbs for high intensity?
generally speaking, let's assume that he was at an elite output. There's not, to my knowledge, a lot of elite athletes doing endurance activities and things that last. People don't normally think of weightlifting as an endurance, but potentially if you're doing it with the intensity that he is, maybe it is, and maybe it's in the sweet spot. It doesn't really matter. But
he likes to call it anaerobic and likes to stray away from referring to weightlifting as endurance.
And he doesn't have to do it as endurance. Maybe he was doing it pure anaerobic. But was it glucose? Does seem to make that easy or feel easier. So the bodybuilders, again, could be right. I'll say like Mike Mentzer's in the past, more recent people like Lane Norton and whatnot, or Peter Attia, or any of the people who are like sciencey science, who are really into the biochem, not hearing anything that suggests like you need 45%. I'm not even hearing that like if you're on steroids, your like body will synthesize at that rate.
So the logic that I most often hear from bodybuilder is that when you are on a weight cut and you are looking to lose fat while still maintaining your muscle, you want to increase the amount of protein consumption so you don't lose your muscles.
I don't know. I mean that literally.
Uh-huh.
I do not know if there's research. Just because there isn't research doesn't mean it isn't true, because we can't research everything. There's a lot of things that are true that we just haven't gotten around to like checking, or we don't have the tech to check. But the theory there then is that you're in a caloric deficit, and under normal circumstances, because you're in a caloric deficit, your body would start pulling pulling sustenance from your tissues, including muscle. But if you eat enough protein, your body will say nah and pull the sustenance from somewhere else. Maybe that's true. I don't know. I mean, that literally, I don't know. Bodies do crazy things.
Yeah.
But you would definitely need some proof for that. It's
right.
Like you're taking a lot of protein, so what? Your body's gonna only use fat cells, or only use skin cells, or some other tissue, or maybe it's that. I'm not sure, because you're in a deficit. Like your body needs this amount of calories.
Right.
You're here. So where is it get it from?
Yeah. I guess that's where their logic comes from too, because like, oh, if I keep eating protein, then it's not going to take the energy from my muscles because I'm feeding my muscles, or I'm repairing them. And
I know that whenever we look at fasting, you lose less lean mass if you're taking in protein, or if you're working out, and so probably the combination of weightlifting and protein minimizes the loss. But I'm not super deep into this literature, so I don't know if anyone's ever recorded zero loss.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, at least until I hit 5%, I'm okay with losing a little bit of mass, but just not a lot.
Gotta experiment with.
I'm satisfied.
Alright, good. And I'm glad that the physique conversation, nutrition, happened while I'm wearing all of my like 90s baggy clothes.
Yes, absolutely. One other question that was just off the top of my head while I was coming over here is, just so far as this project is concerned, I watched Synecdoche, New York, which you haven't seen. Charlie Kaufman wrote it, but it's very similar to the type of project that I actually want to execute, where he was putting on a massive play. I want to put on a massive film universe thing. And I really am interested in using you as a character in a big way. I want to understand how, because I don't want anything to be free, you know what I mean? So I want to understand, like, how you would most like to be compensated for your contribution to this universe. And maybe it's too early to have this discussion because I'm not making any money.
Yeah.
But it is something to start thinking about at some point. Like once this starts generating income, with the type of contribution that I would want from you, such as like lending your fucking brain and like what comes out of your mouth and using that as like, oh, this is the character of, well, in my universe it would be Caleb, but this is Caleb and I didn't write Caleb. I'm not like, the Caleb did not come from me. It came from you. So you would be deserving of a level of compensation. So, like I said, it might be too early to like discuss it now, but it is something that I'm thinking about because I am focused on making money off of this.
Well, until you get to the point where you're making money and it's very literally pulling from me, I don't think we really have to worry about that because I know that, yes, there's a lot of stuff that you're doing that is directly from me right now, just as a sounding board, thought partner, whatever buzzword you want to use. But that's true of everyone who creates anything, Nobody is creating shit in a fucking vacuum, and most people aren't immediately paying royalties to everyone who had some influence over, the ideas that really stuck with them. I understand that your project is different, especially because you're looking to go from inspiration to like direct representation. So, yeah, we can reassess when like you're actually making money for the direct representations.
Okay. Because in my head, I will be casting a version of you within the next 6 months.
Yeah, and for now I'm down to just support the project. It's I'm gonna treat it like any other investment, only instead of giving you money, giving you my time, I guess.
Okay.
If you want to call it that. And the only way you get anything back on an investment is if it works. So yeah. I'm in the same boat as everyone else.
That makes sense. Okay. All right. Well, appreciate it. Final thoughts are 45 minutes. That's a nice short film. Final thoughts are iconic aesthetic physique, experiment, and one thing that popped in my head when it comes to creating an iconic physique is that all the individuals that I personally listed, I have to look up Steve Reeves, but all the individuals that I personally listed, Bruce Lee, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Goku, Baki, they have distinct personalities that are associated with their physiques. And when I think of do you know Jeff Seed?
Yeah.
David Lade?
I don't know David Lade.
Another great physique. In my opinion, they've got great aesthetic physiques in their contemporary, but they're so they're fucking cardboard. They have zero, and in my opinion, they won't be remembered. Maybe they'll be remembered for their bodies, but we're looking for icons. And I think if I execute my personality well enough and actually do achieve the level of physique that I have in mind, I can leave the impact that I have in mind for myself. But that's what I believe.
I can see that. I think, to your point about intention, those guys have things that look like intention on them. I mean, everybody thinks about Arnold Schwarzenegger's chest. Bruce Lee was obsessed with his abs, his lats, and his forearms. And there was his characters in his body. They're not just they're not just some celebrity actor who has to get in shape for a role and they just need to lose a certain amount of body fat. There's something they want to do.
Yeah, precisely. Brad Pitt's another one. I mean, he was able to achieve an aesthetic physique that people remember. They always think of that Fight Club scene. So.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.